few years ago I went on what's called a Large Group Awareness Training Weekend, LGAT weekend. I can't remember the name of the organisation, but there's quite a lot of organisations run it. Probably the most famous being Landmark Forum, which you can search for online. If you do search for it, you'll see it's got a lot of negative associations. It is a bit of a cult, it is a bit of a mind manipulation organisation, and fundamentally it's a scam organisation out to make money, as indeed I think are all LGATs, Large Group Awareness Training sessions. I mean, basically the way this thing works is that the one that I went to, at least, it was in a hotel, like a conference centre attached to a hotel, and I think that's typical of them. And they tend to be all the same. Large group because there's several hundred of you in this room on these chairs, all separated by little gaps between you. A dais at one end, or a little platform where various speakers will stand up and say things. I think the standard format is there's some tables at the back usually where there's literature and forms where you can sign up for particular courses. And then you have these people who are I guess they're kind of runners or ushers who stand at the back and stand in the aisles with microphones. And the purpose of these LGATs is, well, it's always sold as something like empowerment or taking personal responsibility. And the theme of well, in many of them, it's a kind of extreme social constructivist model of the world, which in extreme cases, they do say things like you make your own reality. You make your own. It doesn't just mean, you know, you pick your friends and you pick your job. It means this stuff, perception. You pick your own perceptions. That's in some cases they do actually say that. Social construction of reality, like Berger and Luckman, but done on a big scale. And yeah, so these sessions are, you know, as I say, hundreds of people. There'll be somebody who gives a kind of speech about empowerment or something like that. But the structure of them is always the same. It's always about personal testimony and then response. So typically, you know, some offer will be made for a person to volunteer something, and someone will stand up and they'll make some kind of announcement about what their failings are as a person, or maybe what their successes are, or what they're worried about, that kind of thing. And whatever they say, it's always met with rapturous applause. It's like love bombing, you know. So if you do stand up and you do say something, which is you have to speak into a microphone. You know, one of the runners or the ushers will come to you with a microphone. So when you say something, you're kind of love bombed with appreciation, and particularly if what you say is loaded with emotion. You know what I mean? So if you burst into tears, or you're really angry, or you're hysterical in some way, that gets an enormous amount of approval. And particularly the case if what you're saying is indicating a taking of responsibility. That's a really big thing, taking of responsibility. Because one of the underlying theme, which is to do with this you make your own reality thing, is this notion that everything you do is your responsibility. You're to blame for what's bad happens to you. You're completely responsible for the good things. You deserve all the credit for the good things that happen to you. And that's everything. There is no excuses, ever. This is one of the reasons why it gets lots of flack, actually. Because people like rape victims, for example, or victims of abuse, are blamed, you know, are obliged to kind of blame themselves for their role in those situations, which, you know, understandably is not great. But that's the theme, you know, you take responsibility for your actions. I mean, right down, and particularly actually to the actions of being in that room. So, for example, if you're late, oh God help you if you're late. If you're late, then you are required to take the microphone in your hand and say why you're late and take responsibility for it. And you can't say I was stuck in traffic, you can't say I had an accident, you can't say, you know, my child was ill, none of that stuff. You have to acknowledge that you at a certain point made choices about what you wanted to do, and those choices resulted in you getting there at a certain time. You have to take full responsibility for that, and you occupy that reality tunnel of getting yourself there at a certain time. And similarly, you can't go to the toilet in these things. It's a weird one. You're not allowed to go to the toilet during these LGATs, except during the breaks. And if you desperately need to, then again you have to say into the microphone why it is you need to, what's this, why you didn't go before you came, why you've got this particular bladder condition, take responsibility for your condition of your bladder, whatever it is. And every time you do that again, you're rewarded with rapturous applause and peer group approval and all that kind of stuff. So they're quite intense experiences, and they're very long. You know, you start in the morning at 8 o'clock, you go through till 6, there's a break for lunch, but during that break you're given a task to do. You have to make a certain number of phone calls to people to, I don't know, own up for some past transgression, that kind of thing. Or you have to talk to someone in a particular way. You're given homework to do over the evening before you come back the following day. And of course it always ends with an attempt to sign you up for another course. And people go back to these again and again, say the one that I was at. You know, some people who were there, but it had been 6th or 7th time they'd been to one of these weekends. Which is interesting in and of itself, really. And I can kind of understand it. When you come out of that, you do feel fantastic and you do feel empowered. You know, you do think, oh yes, I am in charge of my life. I am responsible for the things I do. I am the creator of the reality tunnel that I am walking through. You do feel like that. And it lasts for about 2 days, and then it goes away again, and you realise that you're actually enmeshed in a whole network of relations and physical relationships and social relationships. And you have to go back for a top-up, you know, which I think is, as I say, why people tend to go back. But it is a fascinating experience, and of course they try and rope you in to get your relatives involved as well, because it is ultimately about making money. But I'm not going to be entirely critical of this. Not entirely. They are very manipulative, and I'm not recommending it in any sense. But I think the one thing I think is interesting that came out of it for me is at least the idea of personal responsibility. You know, just this foolish endpoint of total personal responsibility, which of course it's completely solipsistic nonsense. Just the idea of that, which you get a flavour of in those environments, does that, for me at least, allow me to think in terms of somewhere on that direction. You know, I think it now allowed me to get a better sense of things I could be responsible for, and just to play with that, you know, just give me a bit of elbow room in that direction. As I say, I'm not recommending it. I suppose I'm saying this because I know someone who is, I would never recommend an LGAT to this person, because I know the person I'm thinking of is very easily swayed by these things and would become a groupie within minutes of entering the room. But this person is very poor at taking personal responsibility. Is very, you know, goes through life as you know, either a victim or else as a fortunate winner. You know, things constantly happen to them. They're constantly in a situation of buffeted by life. You know, constantly buffeted by life, which all of us are at times. But this person I'm thinking of does that in a fairly extreme way, really. And it would be great if that person was able to at least sometimes get the sense of being in the driving seat, as they endlessly say, or was given some sense of mastery, as they endlessly say, and was just able to, you know, just take charge a little bit of that, of themselves, you know, because I think that's really helpful to us. Just a feeling of, yeah, okay, I might not be able to do everything, but I can do some things. You know what I mean? And I'll end on this little entrance to a lane. It's not an entrance to a lane, that's a Sutherland painting I really like. Entrance to a path.